I think it's clear by now that there is something seriously wrong with Christians, at least the most extreme versions. And the same goes for every other theist on the planet. Why? Because they can't separate what they want to be true from what is actually true, and they don't want to know the difference between the two. So let's go look at a very simple case study of religious insanity. These people are completely out of their minds. I know I say that this will be a little different a lot, but this one's going to be a lot different. This is a guy, or an AI voice, I don't really know which, who thinks there is something seriously wrong with atheists while proving conclusively that there is something seriously wrong with him upstairs. This is true of a lot of theists, at least in my opinion, a lot of the people that we look at around here. So let's watch the bald rationalizations fly while providing absolutely no evidence that any of this stuff is actually true, because we all know that these people just don't care, don't we? They just really want to believe.
No one is born an atheist.
Actually, everyone is born an atheist. Nobody pops out of the womb believing in any gods. That only comes later, after they've been brainwashed. This is one of the most ridiculous lies told by the religious because they really want to think they're special. Short bus special maybe, but that's about it. Everyone starts out not believing in any gods. If you never introduce the idea of gods to anybody who gets born, then they'll never believe in any gods. That's what atheism is. It is the lack of belief. Of course, I'm sure he's going to get it all wrong, because that's what the religious usually do. This is just preaching to the choir instead of questing after truth, because what the hell do the religious need with truth anyhow, right?
Atheism is a worldview arrived at by very particular people, sensing types.
Atheism isn't a worldview. That's 0 for 2. Atheism is the lack of belief that any gods are real, period. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it will ever be. If you say that it's anything else, you're wrong. Of course, the religious are wrong a lot, aren't they? They have to be because they are desperately looking for comfort, not factual truth. In fact, they are generally terrified of the truth. The truth isn't comforting after all. So they're perfectly willing to lie to themselves and others in their mad quest for fifis and faith. And that's nothing to be proud of, is it?
Science is for sensing types.
Yeah, intelligent people. You know, people who actually care about the real world and our place in it. Now, I'm going to back off and try to let him say more than a couple of words, because otherwise this video is going to get very, very, very long. It might be anyway, I don't know, but I'll try to let him get some more out there before I smack him down once again. Now, this is something that I see from the religious complaints that I get in the comments, where they will say, well, you're not letting him talk. Sorry, when there's that much concentrated dumb, I have to break in a lot to correct his misconceptions. And unfortunately, in a lot of these religious videos, there is just way too much dumb to let pass without commentary. If you can't handle that, if you don't like it, hey, that's completely up to you. The door's right over there because nothing here is going to change. This is how things are done here. You have a choice whether you want to watch it or not. And there are some theists out there who watch it over and over and over again and complain about the same things over and over and over again. And you know what that is? Insanity. It's doing the same thing over again and expecting the results to be different. What the fuck is wrong with you? So no, I'm not going to just let him talk and run down the primrose path, because this is just wrong. I don't care if you like it or not. This is just how it is. It's hard to do when these videos are so absurdly ignorant and idiotic, but I'll try. That's about all I can promise.
The first step of the scientific method is to use your senses to observe the world. Note that the first step of the scientific method is not to think rationally and logically about the world, the method of thinking types.
But isn't using your senses the only actual link that you have to an external reality? The only rational and logical thing that you can actually do? Because we have no access to anything without our senses. That's the problem of hard solipsism, of course, because we can't prove that our senses actually give us an accurate picture of what's going on in the outside world, but we have to make that assumption just like everybody else does. This Sapientia et Veritas guy is doing the exact same thing. He has to. He has no choice. So what's he getting pissed off at us for? Let's continue and find out.
It's not to emotionally relate to the world and others, the method of feeling types, and it's not to use visionary leaps to comprehend reality, the method of intuitive types.
Oh, brother. A complete loon, that's all we need. You can't relate to a world that doesn't exist. The only way to show that the world does exist, or to find anything out about the world that does exist, is to use your senses, which of course he criticizes. You can't use a visionary leap to comprehend a reality that you are not intellectually aware of. That's what lunatics do. And maybe that explains something, I don't know. But you can't do anything else without an agreed upon grounding in reality, at least as far as we can go. And you know something? Science works. I love how the people who criticize science always do it online using a computer or a cell phone and the internet that wouldn't exist if not for science. Why don't you go and chisel that in a wall somewhere so you don't have to be a hypocrite? Because that's really all these people ever are.
Thinking types, feeling types, and intuitive types all arrive at metaphysical, religious, and spiritual worldviews in one way or another.
Sorry, but I just can't. There's just too much abject dumb here to let it go on unanswered. There is nothing demonstrably spiritual or religious out there, and metaphysical is kind of a woo-woo word that gets misused a lot. So let's pause and talk about that for a second. It comes from the Greek, referring to an idea, doctrine, or posited reality outside of human sense perception, meaning it's complete bullshit. It's something I just dreamed up in my head. Yeah, but that doesn't make it real. I guess it's real in the sense that it's a physical brain state, but that's about it. The things that you make up have no objective reality beyond that. Stop making a complete fool of yourself. Yet that's really all these people can do, right? This is really where philosophy turns to bullshit, because they are trying to study the imaginary, stuff that has no objectively verifiable existence outside of your own head. And what's the actual value in that? Demonstrably, I mean. Someone, please explain in the comments. Rationally, and good luck on that.
Of course, these three types arrive at radically different conclusions. Thinking types do not have a concept of God that has anything in common with the idea of God peddled by feeling types.
Anything, okay. Of course, these things are just made by AI or idiots, because we've seen a lot of that too. Someone needs to spell and grammar check first. You know, give it a shot. But the one thing that he or it doesn't seem to understand or care about is the facts. It doesn't matter what conclusion you reach if your conclusion is not in accordance with the real world. I don't have a concept of a God because there are no gods in evidence. It doesn't matter what you make up in your head if it's not actually real. This is the difference between fiction and nonfiction. Fiction is great if you're just trying to entertain. It's terrible for education. Debating the merits of the Force is pointless, unless you get entertained by it, I guess. Then go right ahead and knock yourself out. The problem here is that some people can't tell the difference between the delusions in their heads and the stuff that's actually going on in demonstrable reality. Why? Because they don't care. Because they're idiots. Take your pick.
Nevertheless, the three types all agree that there is something beyond the physical world.
Since when? So far as we can tell, the physical world is all that actually exists. That's all we have any evidence for. What you talking about, Willis? This is where people really take leave of their senses. They stop being concerned with what they can show to be true through reason and evidence and rational thought, and start thinking that the random shower thoughts in their heads, they must mean something. And they're wrong. At least so long as they're trying to get to factual reality, which, let's be honest, a lot of them are not trying to do. They're trying to get to emotional comfort and thinking that emotional comfort and factual reality are on the same rational plane, and they're wrong. They are not. They are not even close.
Why? Because they are not obsessed with their physical senses and what these physical senses detect.
Which they should be. Now, granted, obsessed is probably too strong a word. I care what is actually going on to the best of my current ability to rationally determine it. I don't care what could be there. I care what is there. I don't care what makes me happy. I care what is factually true. Now, if I'm reading Lord of the Rings, yeah, that's a different matter. I can enjoy orcs and wizards in the moment without thinking that somewhere out there these things just have to be real. I can separate fantasy from reality, which sadly there are a lot of people out there that seem to have a real problem with that, aren't there? These people are delusional, and that's not a good thing.
To limit yourself to sensory data alone is an extraordinarily narrowing and dangerous step to take. Yet this is what defines science, hence atheism and nihilism, which go with science.
Which does not. This is where I have to start questioning this guy's sanity. I've seen this happen in many different contexts. You like your view of reality, so you have to allow me my own. No, I don't. This isn't about your fee-fees. This is about what we can tell, to the best of our current ability to discern it, what is actually going on. This is not, let's make a deal. That's not what's going on. That's why we're looking for objective reality, that which exists beyond that 3-pound meat sack in your head. That which would be here even if you weren't. A lot of people just can't figure that out. These people are lunatics. They really are. As soon as we agree that there is a real world out there and that our senses give us at least some access to it, then we are no longer important. Now we're just reporting on what is, not on what we wish was. We are trying to continually refine our views and test the limits of our abilities to determine what's really out there. How it makes you feel is entirely irrelevant. Learn to deal.
Science wants to and does arrive at the conclusion that reality is meaningless, purposeless, pointless, and random, the opposite of any kind of religious, spiritual, or metaphysical worldview, which is always teleological.
Science does nothing of the sort. The world is not inherently meaningful, nor does it have any inherent purpose. But we can certainly come up with those on our own if we wish. This is where the religious and the philosophically absurd betray their own irrationality, because they expect things to have meanings and purposes on their own, assigned from on high, because they really like the idea. Liking the idea means nothing, never has and never will. This is just seeking comfort, not objective fact. If you pick up a grain of sand, what is its demonstrable purpose? What specific meaning does that particular piece of silica have in the real world? None at all. But that makes these people uncomfortable, and because their discomfort means more to them than the actual facts do, they try to make something up. And then they try to assign that made-up meaning or purpose or whatever to a higher power because they want it to be more than just their own random brain farts. Well, it's got to mean something. No, it doesn't, but it does. This is where the conversation stops because this is one side being wholly irrational and the other side just giving up and going for coffee. Maybe something stronger if this nonsensical conversation has been going on for a while. But the religious and philosophical mental midgets, they can't figure this out, can they? It makes them sad. They don't want to be sad, so they just insist that their made-up nonsense is important. It's meaningful. But they're just wrong, aren't they?
Of course, you cannot observe any meaning, purpose, or point in the world just by looking at it.
Then it doesn't exist. And by looking at it, I'm including determining this in any demonstrable way whatsoever. You don't have to necessarily use your eyes to be able to determine that a thing is real. If you can't show that the thing is real outside of your own head, then you're just an idiot. But that's what all of these people are, right? Their best argument is, it sounds good to me. In fact, that's pretty much their only argument, isn't it? They are really attached to their own comfort and wishes and dreams, but that doesn't matter, does it? That's why they can't put any of these empty claims to any rational test. To prove that it has some kind of validity outside of their own head. Because they don't care about that. They just really want to believe. And that's really, really stupid.
You have to go beyond the merely observable to make contact with meaning, purpose, and point.
And how exactly do you do that? Demonstrably, I mean. Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't make it true. It's the truth value that matters, and these people couldn't care less about that, could they? That's the problem. It's why I've been saying that these people are idiots forever, because they demonstrably are. This video just makes it much clearer where the religious and the philosophy fanboys go wrong. What you want doesn't matter. What you feel doesn't matter. What you really, really, really wish was true is completely irrelevant. There is truth, that which accurately comports with demonstrable reality, and fantasy, that which does not. And you are on the wrong side of that divide. Yet these people don't care about that, do they? They are actively trying to avoid having to deal with reality. Why? Because reality is scary. That's something else that I've been saying forever. I'm at least consistent, aren't I? They really want to feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and reality doesn't do that. Whether you like it or not, you are just an evolved animal on an irrelevant planet in an unimportant solar system in a meaningless galaxy in the middle of nowhere. And they can't deal with those facts, so they just make something up that they like better. But just because you made it up, that doesn't make it true. You need to learn how to deal. You need to learn how to grow the hell up. Stop acting like a moron. It's not a good look.
All humans do this, other than the sensing types.
What? They're not the real lunatics? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there is something inherently wrong with sensing or feeling or intuiting or whatever. That's fine as part of your makeup. It's not fine as your entire makeup. Because as children, we tell ourselves make-believe stories. We make up imaginary friends, and then most of us grow up. There are some people that never do, who absolutely refuse to become the rational, mature adults that they really ought to be, but most of us do anyhow. You need to reach the point at some point in your intellectual and emotional development where you actually come to grips with the real world that you actually live in, and these people can't. Or more likely, they just don't want to. Their brains have never matured. They've never stopped being the childish youngsters because they refuse to leave immature things behind. Now, to some degree, that's okay. You can sit down and watch a movie made for kids and enjoy it. There's lots of movies out there to do that with. There's nothing at all wrong with that, so long as you don't think that what you're watching is real. If you're yearning to return to childish things, then you've got something seriously wrong with yourself upstairs. You need professional help. Sadly, a lot of modern professional help isn't really helping anybody. They're just pandering for a paycheck. I get so sick and tired of that in the real world, don't you?
This is why we must conclude that there is something seriously wrong with sensing types, i.e., atheists.
Because they don't have to act like immature children? That's your argument? What you're doing doesn't make me happy, so it just has to be wrong. No, you're just an idiot. Here we are, living in the real world that actually seems to be there, not letting our emotions run away with us, and you seem to think that we're the ones with the problems. No, that's you. Because you don't get to just make shit up and pretend it just has to be real because you really want it to be. There's reality. Deal. But these people can't. They get emotionally flustered by the mere thought that their heartfelt wishes and dreams might not be true, and they just freak out. And then they make videos on YouTube. And that's not really a good idea, is it?
They lack this ability to step beyond the senses, and that absolutely cripples them.
No, your emotions cripple you. The senses, and yes, we do have to make a couple of assumptions, but they seem to be working. But the senses are telling us important things about reality. Testable things. Things that we can verify again and again and again. Whereas you're just making shit up and insisting that it's got to be true because you really like the idea. You can't prove it. I've been asking theists to prove their gods are real for decades now, and none of them can do it. None of them even try. They just insist it's got to be true because they really want it to be. And that is not a rational way to live your life. Nobody cares what you want to be true. We care only what actually is. Stop being an idiot and learn to deal. It's honestly not that hard.
It does profound damage to their intellect. No intellectual privileges his senses over his intellect.
Without senses, there really is no intellect at all. These are people who want to live in an emotionally comforting happy land in their heads. These people are idiots. But of course, everyone thinks that everyone who disagrees with them is an idiot, don't they? The problem comes when you try to prove that you're not the moron. What methodologies can you use to prove the things that you believe are actually true? That's where the feeling and intuiting types fall apart because they have nothing to rely on. It all comes down to wishes and dreams, fifis and faith. And those cannot be validated to anyone but you and those who agree with you. And that's just not impressive. You can't convince me that you're right. And as I keep saying, they don't even try. They ought to be able to do that to other people. They ought to have evidence that they are correct. And they don't care. If I want to prove to you that this rock that I have in my hand is real, I have ways to do that, up to and including bashing you over the head with it until you either admit that it's real or you just pass out from blunt force trauma. One way or the other, this rock is real. So do that with your gods. How do you show me that your God actually exists outside of your head? And the answer is, you have no way to do it because from all the evidence that we have, it just isn't true. Stop making a fool of yourself. It's not helping.
Duh. Some people have no internal monologue. Some people have no theory of mind. Some people have a fantasia.
Some people are delusional. What's your point? Because this is what goes wrong in philosophy a lot. They start to assume that the picture that they invent in their heads about reality is actually an accurate picture of what reality is really like. They have no means to put that picture to the test, which is what they really need to do because they are really impressed with their own supposed mental faculties. Then they build an ice castle in their heads and do everything in their power to keep it away from the heat of the sun. They don't want to deal with reality. Reality frightens them. Too bad, because it's still there. All of this running and hiding is just childish. You can't escape the real world no matter how hard you try. And that's where the religious go wrong. They are just terrified children trying to hide under the bed so they don't have to go outside. Fuck you people. You're all just nuts.
Atheists lack the means to see beyond their senses.
And please describe exactly how to do that. Provide testable details, because what you wish was true isn't true unless you can back it up objectively. Yet they have no interest in doing any of that, do they? That's why every time we ask a theist to provide evidence for their gods, they just make excuses. They have no evidence. They only have empty claims that they can't back up in any realistic way, and blind faith and wishes and dreams that provide emotional comfort. But that doesn't make any of it true, does it? So you get bullshit like this that also doesn't support their claims. It just makes them feel good because that's all they're in it for. Fifis! What a bunch of fucking children. They really need to learn to grow up.
With regard to the metaphysical, religious, and spiritual order, they are deaf, dumb, and blind.
Because none of those things demonstrably exist. That's the problem. It's the demonstration that matters. They are making wild claims about stuff they have no reason whatsoever to think is actually true. We certainly don't think so, and your wild-eyed assertions aren't going to impress us because you haven't backed any of this up in a way that we can independently test and conclude is valid. So they invent their own pie-in-the-sky fantasies and claim we're really right, there's something wrong with them. But in reality, it's exactly the opposite. We have the only testable methodologies that actually demonstrably work. They have nothing but, it sounds good to me. They are immature children living in adult bodies who refuse to grow up and deal with the actual world around them. They just can't handle it, but they're not mature enough to understand that the problem is them, not us. Because they are not after the truth. They're just after their own emotional comfort, and that is pathetic. Anyhow, sorry I stopped at pretty much every line, but there's just way too much stupidity here to do otherwise. There are videos that are like that, sorry. People just making empty assertions about how wonderful and special they are with nothing at all to back it up beyond fifis and faith, and that is not impressive. They think it is. I think they're nuts. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. We'll come back and finish off this video next week. I wouldn't be expecting it to get any better because, yeah, wow, this guy has some serious problems upstairs, doesn't he? But then again, what the hell else is new, right?